I think we're going to get started now. So thank you everyone for coming here. This is how nonprofits can integrate their digital and print marketing for powerful results. We have Chris here to talk about the printing side and Emily here to talk about the digital side, and really how you can use one and leverage the other just to kind of make everything work together. Um, you know, no one's denying how powerful digital marketing is, but printing is used by many businesses and nonprofits to frankly reach their goals and reach their goals successfully. So that's why we kind of wanted to bring up this conversation, because we felt like people didn't quite know how to connect the two. Here we go. So on the slide, we created this, we wanted to let people know that print collateral is still important. People still use it to get donors, to increase donations, to reach fundraising goals. And then we thought about how it really works better if you can integrate it with your digital. And we're gonna have some great strategies to talk about ways that we can do that, some success stories, as well as a story that, a campaign could have been improved if they had integrated it. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the printing process and how you can do a few tweaks just to make your collateral more memorable, and so it can have better response rates. So the first person who's going to get to talk today is Emily Morris. She's a PhD, Vice President of Marketing and Communications, Chief Brand Officer for Chautauqua Institution. That's a mouthful, but she's going to take it over from here. She's got 30 years of experience in nonprofit and higher education. And she's also the executive producer for CHQ. So she's seen a lot of collateral leave and get mailed out, and has seen the performance of many, many campaigns over the years. And with that, Emily, I'm going to let you take over and give us your strategies for integrating digital and print.
All right. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. It's a pleasure to sit with you all this afternoon for a few minutes to share ideas about how to best leverage our limited resources for building the brands of nonprofit organizations and also enhancing the impact of our respective missions. Chautauqua Institution is a nonprofit organization founded nearly 150 years ago to make purposeful use of leisure time for the common person. Our founders envisioned a retreat-like setting where people could come. In the early days, it was greatly focused on women and children to enhance their knowledge and understanding of the world through 4 programmatic pillars: education, religion, the arts, and recreation. That programmatic focus continues today as our campus has expanded to 700 acres along Chautauqua Lake in southwestern New York State. We operate year-round, including with arts education initiatives in regional schools, on-grounds programming, and most recently, an online campus called CHQ Assembly that is accessible to the world on desktop, mobile, and television apps. The centerpiece of our mission has always been a 9-week summer assembly season, during which we present more than 2,000 programs and events centering on themes that are designed to explore the most important issues of the day. We aspire to engage people in civil conversations, leading toward deeper understanding and a greater sense of empathy for the other. My role is that of Vice President of Marketing and Communications, as Ryan said. I also serve as executive producer of CHQ Assembly, which is the online business that we've just launched. As we speak, we're concluding week 8 of 9, our traditional summer assembly being presented only online this year. But the online assembly continues throughout the year, and I encourage you to take advantage of a free 90-day trial accessible at assembly.chq.org until August 31st, and that's my shameless promotion, and I promise there won't be any more of that. It's my hope that this can be a conversation versus simply a presentation. I have a few ideas to share, but I am betting that you all have even better ideas and experiences, and we shouldn't miss the opportunity to learn from each other today. So please feel free at any time to raise your hand to contribute to the conversation, and I know Ryan's going to keep an eye on the participants so that you can interject if you have any questions or wish to raise an observation. The promotional information about this webinar promised that I would share some strategies and tactics related to the integration of print and digital communications. I'll be honest with you that in putting together this information for today, I probably found more missed opportunities than I found success stories to share, which is to say, this work is always a work in progress. If you take a look back at your previous campaigns, as I did, I think that you'll find room for improvement. I know I certainly did. So thanks for this opportunity to take a step back and more objectively evaluate what we're doing here at Chautauqua. But there was one thing that was really clear to me, that in every campaign case that I examined, is that print and digital work together tremendously well, and most often they don't work well at all alone. Before we move on to the examples I've prepared for you, I'd like to take us back to some basics. As we create communication campaigns, I always like to ask the question, what do I want my target audience to think, know, and believe, and do as a result of this campaign? It's a good question to ask when you're conceiving and evaluating your work. My first example of the integration of a print and digital campaign is a simple trifold postcard, a self-mailer, my Pittsburgh accent is sneaking into this conversation. We like this format because it's frankly inexpensive and it's effective. With this campaign, which includes this trifold postcard, a website landing page, and an email component, what we want people to think is that Chautauqua has a great program planned for the summer. What we want them to know is that it's important to act now to purchase tickets and make accommodations reservations because space is limited. We want them to believe it's a good value for the money, and what we want them to do is to visit the website for more information and to begin planning their visit. We used user-friendly URLs in our call to action. We found that works best with our population, which is greatly 55 plus. QR codes are making a comeback, or they've made a comeback, and they can be used in a similar way, potentially most effective for a younger population that's walking around with mobile devices attached at the hip. Here's the companion landing page that the friendly URL leads to. It's no longer live, so it's a bit difficult to see the full effect here, but it was a dynamic page with video components and great mobile functionality, which is very important. Calls to action here included requesting more information, purchasing tickets, and making accommodations reservations. This piece was mailed in early March of this year, quite a bit later than we would normally send it, but it still got a good response. The spike that you see here in our website traffic in January coincided with another print piece that went out around that time, and it's also our on sale date for tickets. You can see a flattening of activity in April when we would normally see very good online traffic that would have been generated through follow-up digital and email campaigns. We discontinued marketing at this point this year as we awaited our decision about what we would be doing this summer. Compared to previous years, that kind of drop-off would be unusual. But my point here is that the integration of print and digital works, particularly when, like in this case, there's a time-sensitive call to action. Here you can see the web traffic from the same campaign last year. Each of those spikes represents a print piece drop or a print piece in tandem with various points in our sales cycle. It's like print becomes the heartbeat of our engagement. Being able to craft campaigns that you can track like this, and we also, of course, track purchasing, click-through rates, and other customer engagement metrics. This makes a difference to the bottom line of the organization. Our efforts last year led to the best year in recorded history at Chautauqua. The marketing team's ability to show how our investments lead to the desired results for both earned and philanthropic revenue has resulted in deeper investments in what we do. It all starts with simple campaigns, smartly imagined and well executed, and each effort is a building block. My next example is one of failure and then recovery. In June of 2019, we launched a brand new publication, transitioning from a newspaper-style print piece to a 4-color glossy magazine with what we hoped would be a 6-month shelf life. The magazine is beautiful, if I must say so myself. It has fantastic photography, wonderful editorial copy, and feature segments. It's a real showpiece for Chautauqua. The only thing is, I can't really tell you anything about its impact. Sure, we got some emails. Most were positive, some were negative. But because we had no companion digital space for the magazine, it effectively disintegrated once it hit mailboxes. We had planned no way to engage and invite conversation about this piece and its components. In fact, we were relatively certain that there was such a lack of engagement in the editorial copy that we decided more than a year later that the content had life left in it, and we launched the digital version of the magazine as a blog on Medium. What a brilliant recovery. Now we can see how people are engaging with the content, and we have an internationally linked digital resource for this and future content. This spring, when we couldn't expend resources on print to do a print edition of the magazine, we published one of the editorial pieces from our planned magazine here. So far it's had 92 reads, and we think it still has life left in it. Medium, by the way, is a wonderful resource to use in leveraging your storytelling. It doesn't cost anything to give it a shot. They also have a partner program that may be worth investigating as your blog becomes more sophisticated. The point in this example is the same point I made earlier. Print and digital do really well together, and alone they don't seem to do well at all. Or maybe better said, you don't have much of a way to know whether they have an impact unless you use them together. Particularly with something that doesn't have a particular call to action, such as a magazine, it's difficult to expend resources on something that you can't measure. The digital life of your print pieces gives you the data you need to measure success, and it also extends the life of your print pieces. In summary, I'd like to provide just a couple of quick examples of low-cost ways to integrate print and digital in this time of restricted resources. Normally, we print a beautiful donor recognition booklet. This is the book of donor lists that all of us in the nonprofit space have a love-hate relationship with. How can a list of names mean anything to our constituents? Isn't it time to do away with this? The answer is a resounding no for most of us. This piece matters to almost every fundraising operation I've ever known of. People like to see their name in recognition of their donation. And research shows they also imagine a time when their name will appear on a different giving level list in the book. But this year we just didn't have the money to invest in the booklet, so we created an online booklet. The challenge here is that it's a PDF. That's problematic from an ADA perspective, as you all know. And I can't track views. I can't tell which pages get the most traffic, etc. It's flat from a data perspective. To supplement the digital email distribution of this publication, we also sent a postcard. But I can't tell you how effective it was because the PDF traffic isn't trackable. That's a lesson learned. So the team had the right idea. Supplement your digital with print, but in execution, they limited their ability to track engagement by using a PDF. The simple solution is house the report on a landing page instead of making it a direct link. It's still a PDF, so still problematic from an ADA perspective, and that's important. And I can't track engagement across the document. So we still have some room to grow here, but at least I can tell you whether patrons are accessing the document from the email and whether the postcard is giving the effort any lift. Sometimes you use print just to keep your brand front and center for your patrons. Something as simple as a refrigerator magnet can make an impact. We use them for our annual calendar of events, and the centers pop out so they become a frame for your favorite picture. But what I'd like you to think of is the low-cost ways you can get something in the hands of your constituents that keeps your brand in front of them. Calendars, magnets, bumper stickers, these things still work, believe it or not. And your printer will have lots of ideas for new kinds of products that you can create together. If your budget can handle it, it's a good thing to include in your annual mix. Even better if you can find a way to track resulting engagement. Your printer doesn't succeed if you don't. That's what I love about this particular marketing relationship. The printers we work with have the right sources of motivation, that being the success of their customers. Pick their brains on a regular basis, see what has worked for other customers. They know when it pays to invest in a higher quality paper and when it doesn't. And they also know a lot about the timing of mail drops and so many other details. They can be a great resource for you. And with that, I'll turn it over to a very wonderful resource in Chris Uhas.
Thank you, Emily. And I promise that Emily's not on our payroll or getting a kickback from any of our sales. Her kind words of the printing industry really are very good for us because we believe in everything that obviously Emily had to say. We've met a couple times now getting ready for this webinar, and every time I listen to her statistics and her data, I'm like, I know. I just try to get all of our customers to believe and to listen and to understand everything that Emily is saying. To introduce myself, I'm Chris Uhas. I'm the president of POV Solutions, located in Chagrin Falls. That's in Cleveland, Ohio. We've been in business for about 30 years at this point, and we've worked with nonprofits of large category to small category and everything in between. So we've seen a tremendous amount of different things that work and that don't work as well. So we kind of really do specialize into this nonprofit arena, if you will. And, we're proud to help everybody as much as we can. We're commercial printers by trade and do all the way from small short run digital all the way to commercial high run volume work. And kind of the little knickknack here is that Emily was one of my graduate assistant or graduate professors. I was at Edinburgh University, and so everything I've learned from her and others. I'm sure that I drove her crazy while we were at school together, and I think that I still am in some way. So Emily, thank you so much for helping us with this presentation. It means an awful lot to me. Moving right into how we're going to go ahead and reduce print spend, improve results. That's obviously what everybody is trying to do, is to minimize the budget and drive better results. So I've come up with a couple of key points here, and I'm going to try to move through here. I did a test run this morning that took about 30 minutes, so I've got to kind of cram that down into 15. I get excited about this stuff. Making your own decisions and purchasing direct is a real big nut for you to try to get to. We work with a number of agencies. We work with a number of direct end users. And I always recommend to anybody I come in contact with as you start to work with an agency, you might want to mention right off the bat that, hey, we have our own relation with another printer. If you want to go ahead and provide pricing for us, that's great, but we're going to also be getting prices put together direct. That's really important. Every time that project hits somebody's hands, you're going to have a touch. The touches obviously continue to add cost. And on a printing run, certainly 10, 15% really can amplify the overall cost of your budget. So try to make sure that you're working direct with your printer, and you'll also be able to learn a lot more from that printer if you have that one-on-one interaction. The expertise component, pull from outside services. My team here always laughs at me that I'll be in the back building a ramp. I was building a ramp this morning for a new machine we bought. 20 minutes later, I was plumbing out the toilet and feeding the cat, and then I was going into quoting and SEO management. So I get it. I know that everybody has to wear multiple hats, but you really have to kind of drill into where your strengths are, where your team strengths are. Maximize the resources. We use an outside digital agency, the folks that are helping us here with this presentation. But make that channel, that support group that you've created is critical, and to really take that budget and to amplify wherever you can. Let the printer be your expert at printing. That's what they're hopefully able to provide to you. Maybe your agency is doing your digital marketing side. Let them consult and let them work that point. So it's really important to work in the areas and draw as much as you can from everybody you're involved with. The graphic designers that you're going to be working with, it's so important that you're in tune with your graphic designers. Some folks do it internally. It's fine. We have a lot of customers who spend way too much time worrying about what it's going to look like when they should be really worrying about what they're saying. So on the graphic design component, make sure that you're working closely with your graphic designer. Don't just cut it loose and say, hey, come back to us with some ideas. I can't tell you how many times projects get to us that are already been designed. No one's talked to the printer. And I'm the guy that has to try to explain to the customer that these elements that we've created are going to cost X amount of dollars when possibly an inch could have saved us, 20% of the overall budget. So make sure that you're in touch with your graphic designer, whether they're internal or external. That conversation should start at the very beginning. You're going to want to reach out to your printer and ask them, when can we produce our product and stay on track and get the best pricing we possibly can. Right now, I don't really know, and I don't think anybody can tell you what's going to happen the closer we get to November this year. There's an awful lot going on in the postal system right now, as we're all aware of. So end of the year mailings now are becoming a real hot topic. You got to make sure you plan and you get in. And that's really important. Sometimes printers have different areas of their schedules that are not as filled and are wanting to fill space. You can't be afraid to ask and approach your printer. Remember, they're on your side. When you're successful, we're successful. But again, don't be afraid to reach out to your printing company and ask them, is there a better time I can run this project to get a better price? Look for sales. We have a sale that's coming up on one of our brochure projects that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. But we know that we can push the volume through in September. That works well for us. It works well for our nonprofits. So ask the questions. Donuts and beer also can go a long way with your printer. So I'm not suggesting that to try it, but it has been done at POV and it's had good results. Let's see, moving into the data management component of what we do. Data is so important. Emily, her project, the way that she's managing her material makes it look real easy, but it's thorough. It's so thorough, and the ability to be able to tell when your projects are dropping into the mail, that is not an easy process. There's been a tremendous amount of time that Emily and her crew and all her support people have put together to be able to do that. But you've got to start somewhere. Data management is a process. It's a process that's always building. Ryan, we have a slide that's there that's a little bit further down, the POV self-contained mailer. There you go, right there, the giving one. Can you jump back to that one, the yellow one? There you go. This is a great example of a request with demographic mailing, where our customer literally, they tell you when you gave the last amount, they tell you how much that you've given, and then they're going to go ahead and also kind of ramp you up a little bit more each time to get a little bit more out of you. It's pretty blunt. It's right to the point. But again, the nonprofits, as much as they're a nonprofit, they're in the industry to be able to support a cause. To support the cause, you need to generate income. Sorry, Ryan, I know I kind of skipped there a little bit on you. Moving into multiple mailing pieces, the more pieces that you have in your printing project, the more it's going to cost. We really would rather encourage you to try to scale your pieces back as much as you can so that you're able to, again, minimize the budget. We've come up with a product that we refer to as a self-contained mailer. There it is. And we have had customers who have reported excess of 30 to 35% savings on these type of brochures. And again, I'm not trying to plug this product, but we've had really good results. We provide these throughout the states for universities, nonprofits, and others. But this particular piece is something that we've put together where everything is included. Everything is enclosed in one package so that we don't have the envelopes and the this and the that. We've even taken this project up one more step into a web to print environment to where our customers are able to get the efficiency where they can get their pricing right when they're working on the projects. With the self-contained mailer, we have 6x4, 3 panels, so they can configure everything. It's not that I don't want to talk to my customers. I love talking with them, but I can't tell you that when you're working out on a Saturday morning or a Sunday evening, I like to believe I'm available, but sometimes I'm not. But this concept of being able to take the entire web to print and to be able to automate it is part of who we are. So our self-contained mailers are a real good trinket, and they really can help improve your bottom dollar. And your printer can also probably provide something similar. Our templates are online. You're always welcome to use them. Moving into some of the tactics that we're using with our direct mail. I know that Emily already touched on some of these, and I'm going to go a little bit more into them. Personalization of mailing. It's proven time after time that it does make a difference to personalize your mail. Now, you have to understand that there are many different levels of personalization of mail. Something as simple as saying, "Dear Mr. Smith," something that's extremely simple. If you start to integrate personalization on the front and the back of your projects, can definitely be done. Again, it adds a little bit more cost, but we always have to be evaluating what is it we're getting for the return on investment with whatever we're doing. Personalization we've done, those mailings that you get in the mail from your automotive dealer that has the picture of your car and the year and this and that, the really annoying ones. I have to tell you that we have printed some of those, but you can get real advanced. But again, the more advanced you get, the more cost you tie up into it. So you might want to start simple and start to work more and more personalization in. The QR codes, I know that Emily spent a little bit of time already on that. I just saw one the other day for Taco Bell that had pictures of tacos on the QR. The little dots were tacos. QR codes, they've been around a while. There are many sources online that you can use to go ahead and get QR codes, but it allows you to take and really start to focus on how you're going to tie your piece back into your online presence. And again, as Emily proved and talked about, it's critical that these all work together. A QR code is a real simple way to get somebody back into a landing page or gather other demographic information. Integrating the keywords, obviously, into the print product is really important. And giving your folks a reason to go back and to hit your website. So you're strategizing as to how you're going to write the material for the project. Other than just asking for money, sometimes you also want to drive them back to the website for information that maybe you're trying to gather for a survey. Surveys are a great way to draw attention into your mailing. Giveaways, certainly you're in the nonprofit area, so a giveaway might not be something that you have to do a lot, but maybe a bumper sticker or something that you can easily send out. Again, you're trying to build a demographic. So look for really creative ways. Emily seems to be an expert and is I'm totally blown away by what they're doing. Moving into visual cues here. Number 3 is I've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. I'm right on schedule. Visual cues are prompts that are becoming really popular in our industry today. We were just discussing while we were online earlier about the sense of smell, which isn't something we've experienced yet, but our industry is really continuing to drive into taking your product, your organization, and increasing your self-value. And with all of these visual cues, your self-value is guaranteed almost 10 to 15% more. So as much as you're worried about, well, how much is that going to cost? What we're seeing in our industry is that digitalization is starting to take over a lot of what used to be, no way, you can't afford to do it. One of the ones that we have spent a lot of time and energy in is on tactile UV, where you're able to, this stuff is really hard to photograph, so I apologize, but we're able to really bring a tactile experience. When someone picks it up, touches it, they can literally feel it. There's a differentiation of height in what you're printing. And we can do that for bullet points. You can do that to create rain droplets. You can do that to create a textured sand beach. You can even use it for variable data. So textured UV, and it's digital. And again, it makes it possible to do 500, do 1,000, do 1,500, where you're really starting to drive in on that personalization to your target market. It gives you that ability to do it. The foils, this is a great example of a foil here that we're starting to do digital as well. No dyes are required. In the old market, you had to make a die to make a foil, and the dies and the foils to do the process were not inexpensive. We now do that digital. So we can foil, whether it's a key on a card, we can foil a name onto a project. But again, the foil is a real good way to gain that attention in the mailbox, and there's going to be a lot of mail moving. So we want to make sure that you stand out. Die cutting, which is one of my favorites. We walked into our trade show last year and we bought 2 of these machines on the spot because they're just so cool that we can now integrate real easy cuts. You can do cutouts, you can do business card slits, you can mount a magnet, you can do anything that you want. This was for a project we did for our local Habitat for Humanity. That was for an event for Framing Future. And so our customer thought that'd be a great idea to invent a house. And yeah, it adds cost probably 15 to 20% on this particular project, but over 500 units, the response that they got well outweighed the cost. And again, you're looking for ways to take your printed projects and really focus and personalize it so that your end user is going to be interested in it. Now, that doesn't mean we should use the foil, the UV, and the die cutting. We're happy to do that for you, don't misunderstand me, but your graphic designer, these are all new areas, but these are all real great tools for any graphic designer to start to utilize into their presentation. And I'm at 16 minutes, and I did really well getting through everything that I had to get through. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it back over to you. That's just an example of a spot UV, which isn't very exciting. So I'll let Ryan take it from here.
All right, everyone. Great job, Chris. Great job, Emily. I know I learned a ton. I just wanted to recap a few of the points here. And so we have smart ways to integrate digital and print. Use simple mailers with info that sends people to landing pages via vanity URLs and QR codes. Plan a digital companion space for your print efforts. Track all digital and print efforts to generate data and get a success baseline. And then look for low-cost ways to keep your brand in front of the audience, like calendars, magnets, bumper stickers, etc. We are now taking questions, and I thought I would start it off. This one's for you, Emily. Are there basic data elements that you would recommend nonprofits track? What are those data points that really that you're looking for?
Well, I would recommend, if you have not already done so, and I apologize if you've done this already and it seems mundane, but I often find that some people aren't aware that you can set up Google Analytics on your website so you can see where people, how people are using your website. And I'm assuming you know all of that. You can make sure that you're tracking the specific URLs that you're including in your calls to action. So that's all I was showing you is the URLs that we're using in our print pieces, or what I was showing you in my presentation, where I could see how the traffic to that site changed as our print pieces hit the streets. So that's a good place to start. Use specific places on your website where you're asking people to go through your print pieces, and then just see how the traffic to those pages changes once your print pieces hit the mail. It's kind of fun to track. Of course, also you want to track your open rates for emails. If you're using MailChimp or Constant Contact, there's all kinds of resources to help you see how people are engaging with your online communications. So track your open rates. If you have links within your emails, which you probably should include if you're not already doing that, track the click-through rates to see how people are responding to your emails. We'll often resend an email with just a different subject line to anyone who hasn't opened it to see if we can increase the open rates. And if we see in an email that was opened quite often but no one clicked on any of the links, then we'll just resituate the links or highlight them differently within the email. That's what you're trying to get people to do. You want them to open it, and then you want them to do what you've asked them to do, which is to click through to see more information or to make a donation, or in our case, we're asking people to purchase gate passes, concert tickets, etc. Um, Google, by the way, if you're not familiar how to use Google Analytics to track conversions within your web page, they have fantastic online tutorials. All of them are free. And there's lots of free resources. That's where I've learned most of everything I've learned about using Google and Analytics and Tag Manager and all that business. Is through their free tutorials. It's not free to get the certification if for some reason you want to have that as part of your professional credentials. You have to pay a small fee to get the Google Analytics certification test, but that might be worthwhile.
We have a question that came in, and this one was for you, Chris. Can you touch on how to find a printer and what specifically you should look for in a mailing list?
Well, there are two different questions entirely. How to find a printer. There are a lot of printers that are out there. I think that a lot of the printers that are still there are all doing a good job. It's been everybody always asks us as to what's the longevity of the printing industry, and we've been hearing that question for 30 years, and we're still growing at this point like a weed. I think that what's important when you're looking for a printer is find somebody you're comfortable with. Go visit their facilities. You don't want to get yourself into a situation where your printer is then sourcing the product to another printer who potentially might be sourcing the product to another finishing company or more touches. Again, remember, you're trying to minimize the touch factor. That doesn't mean that your local printer can't handle your projects, but just make sure you ask a lot of questions as to the manufacturing process, to what's being done, and that the printer is doing everything, or are there any steps that have to leave their facility. But I would certainly, get with somebody who's local, who you feel that you can have a good relation with. As far as Ryan, the second part of the question was the mailing list. What's important with the mailing list?
Yeah, what specifically should you look for in a mailing list?
Well, we have two different theories with mailing lists. One of them, we like our customers to have their mailing list and to have as much information worked through when they're working on mailing lists. And we generally will find that, not generally, but mailing lists sometimes are managed from another division inside of the division who has no correlation with the marketing department. And so you need to make sure that if you're going to be providing your own mailing list, that you're working closely or at least drawing the information that you need. And you may need to have a team relation that they're starting to collect more information for you. We sometimes run into where customers are running systems that are old, antiquated data, and they have very little control of giving you good data, where you might need to have an auxiliary Excel sheet yourself that you can build and work with. But certainly being able to produce good data, make sure that your printing company is doing NCOA on the list to make sure that they're running it, deduping it. We have a lot of control of those lists. We also have the ability to buy lists based on different demographics. So we can purchase a list if you were in the equine business of sorts or an equine nonprofit. Yes, we can find all the people who have horses in the state of Ohio or wherever you want. We can build lists based on a lot of criteria. Lists can be expensive, and the only thing I would tell you, if you're going to purchase a list, make sure that you're purchasing it for multiple use if that's what you're going to do. Generally, if you buy the list at 70%, it's only another 20-30% to use it for repeated. So make sure that you understand that. And we like to buy lists for ourselves, but we'll also buy contact information. Whenever we're purchasing a list, we're entering them in our databases, and then we're following up with everybody we mail to.
Great advice. Great advice, Chris.
Can I say something about mailing lists to supplement what Chris has said?
Absolutely.
As long as it's positive.
Yeah, of course. There are two things I like to say about mailing lists. Number one, generally speaking, you're never mailing anything to every single name that you have in your database. So that's, I always try to ask our team to think about, who are we really attempting to communicate with this communication, And that's always going to get you a higher response rate, is that you've identified a segment that you're communicating to in a voice that's going to be meaningful to them. The second piece is that you would want to think twice about sending the same communication to a list that you've purchased that you would be sending to a list of your existing patrons. This may sound really fundamental, but if you're purchasing a list, chances are these people don't know anything about you. And so it would be very unusual for you to be successful in sending a communication to a group of people who don't yet know you very well or at all, that you would be sending to a group of people who do have an existing relationship with you. I know that sounds fundamental, but I have seen people use purchase lists and send them the very same communication that they've sent to someone who they've engaged with for 15 years. And I don't think that's likely ever to really result in outcomes that are going to be worthy of the investment.
Great point.
Ryan, I wanted to just add, do I have a second to add on to one of Emily's comments earlier, back to the demographics and the Google Analytics. You know, being in the commercial printing business that we too have to sell and are always out selling. And we're seeing right now our entire industry is changing in the way that we're selling. But one of the things that we're doing is that we're sending out a tremendous amount of information on our company where we establish our leads first. But we're documenting, we're giving all of our products that we're sending out to our customers to review. We're giving them reason to bump our website so that we're able to track and monitor what products are showing interest, which products are not showing interest. So, you know, we're talking nonprofit, but even on the commercial side, these demographics are just as important for us as a nonprofit. So that it's a key to gauge your level of success.
Good point. Good point, Chris. Chris, another one for you. Question here. How do you find the sweet spots between spending a little more on embellishments, but also keeping the number of recipients lower?
Well, that's you know what my first recommendation is on that. We know that you're going to incur probably 15%. It depends on what you're doing. With a lot of the UV products, they're driven by the amount of UV that you're using rather than using it. You know, you can go real quick from 30 cents a sheet or 10 cents a sheet to $2 a sheet, just depending on what you're doing. So we prefer that, and again, a lot of it is based on the content of what is being communicated. And so we want to try to build in the fishing lure concept to your key points as much as we can. That's where you can use a foil on your introduction, something that's going to really hit right what you're trying to communicate. You want to amplify that message as much as you can. So where do you find the sweet spot? The easiest thing to do is certainly start off smaller and then kind of build in a little bit more. But it's, you know, we've done research, we've talked to folks, we've done blogs that talks about this concept of visually stimulating the brain to react. And you're going to gain, it's statistically been said to be at least 10 to 15% in brand recognition and to improve the value of your message. So that can be important. That really can be important. We don't like to see people spending money foolishly. If you come to me and say, we want to do 13 different foils on this brochure, I'm going to ask you why, more than, you know, we can only do so much to help you save, but I really think that brand value is extremely important. And now that we can do it on the lower end projects, you know, you can definitely play with it and see if you get results off of them.
Question here for Emily in relation to printing. What type of printed piece has had the best results? And then second question, when it comes to analytics, where is the best place to start for a nonprofit business? I think you mentioned Google Analytics before, but yeah, a printed piece, what has had the best result for you?
Well, I think I mentioned we use almost exclusively self-mailers because, I mean, think about the mail you get. I mean, if you've ever even made an inquiry about a cruise or any sort of travel experience, for example, to borrow from that industry, you're going to start to get bombarded with print pieces. And sometimes I'll just go, in my previous life, I worked for universities, and I would just go sign up for information from the university for their undergraduate and their graduate program just to see the kinds of communications they would send. And they're sending, everything is a self-mailer. I mean, the people that are going out of business are the envelope people, I bet, because self-mailers are so effective, you know. Your recipient doesn't have to do a thing to start consuming your message and to have an impression of your brand. And as Chris mentioned, there's just some really interesting things that are being done these days with die cuts and different kinds of folding that make pieces compelling for you to say, oh, you know, what's this? So that's what we use almost exclusively. We have one piece that we send in an envelope, and that's because it's really a very downstream piece. It's people who've already made a choice to come to Chautauqua, and it's sort of like their planning package for their forthcoming experience. That's the only piece we send with an envelope. Now, on the development side of things, the fundraising side of things, I know they, of course, will include thank you notes and things in envelopes, but they use a lot of self-mailers as well. The other part of your question, you know, I think the best place to start with analytics is with your database, and starting to think about what kind of information you're collecting about your constituents and how you're organizing that information, especially if you ever imagine yourself moving into a variable data sort of mailing experience, having a database. And if you're fortunate enough to have a constituent relationship management system, a CRM, focusing on getting the information organized in a consistent way across your contacts, I think, is frankly the foundation of all analytics. And then from there, that's not an event, that's a process. You're always going to be working on your data. Your data is never going to be perfect. So just, you know, start from there and recognize you're always going to want it to be better. But, you know, choose one area to focus on and systematically implement updates and changes and consistency across your database. Next step would be, you know, just find a way to track your email response rates, as I mentioned before. And then in anything you're doing in print, think about how you're going to, you know, what your call to action is going to be to get somebody to engage with you in a digital space, whether it be to request more information or to go to a landing page to enter into a, you know, to attend an event or to participate in a webinar. Just think about how you're going to measure the success of this campaign. One of those measurements is going to be a call to action to do something on the digital side of things, on your website, on a landing page, in a registration page, etc. That's where I'd start.
Great answer. Chris, I got one here for you. Emily touched on how she uses self-mailers almost exclusively. Being a printer of self-mailers, you know, are there some kind of cutting edge, what are some of the cutting edge technologies when it comes to self-mailers? You know, whether it's QR codes or seal strips or
we're starting. Yeah, I mean, we've been in this self-mailer situation now for about 5 years now. We started playing with an online presence, and now we're to the point where we're selling them. I don't want to say daily, but there are a lot of activity that goes on with them. And actually, we have started to manufacture them here in our facility. And some of Emily's comments I like, but yeah, there's still a little future for envelopes still. But you know, it's a real difficult manufacturing process for these brochures. And our problem is that our customers generally need to get them out quick. We've had to turn away orders because they need to get them out that fast, and that's the reason why we're starting to manufacture them here in our facility. But as far as the technology that we're seeing, again, you know, we have the ability to build up to 6 panel. You know, we can do multiple perfs and we can do peels and seals, but it comes down to, again, a balance of communication, of message versus usage, if that makes sense, is to bringing them into your digital platform and utilizing both sources. Sure, we can do peel and seal. Most commonly, most people just do the remoistenable glue on them. But you can definitely tie QR codes into those. And we're kind of crazy about it, but we can actually do personalization on both sides of them even, which gets kind of tricky. Whenever, as I had mentioned earlier, once you start to do personalization on two sides of something, it starts to get a lot more difficult to produce. We can't run as fast. We have to be a lot more concerned about sort management as we're going through. You need to make sure that the front backs up with the right of the back side. But we're having customers have success with that, with using personalization on both sides. You can definitely integrate foiling into it, but you have to be able to justify everything that we're doing. Now, as much as we like to sell the touch points, when you start to involve touch points into complicated bindery, it can definitely get cumbersome. So, but there are many different options that are available. A lot of it's dependent on quantity. I like it when our customers are doing 500, they're doing 750, they're doing 1,000. They're really specializing, as Emily said, that they have multiple different touches that they're doing with their mailing projects. This population is not going to get the same mailing as that population. So you really have the advantage when we're starting to switch into the digital mode, especially on a self-mailer that before just a couple of years ago, it was always done on a press. Now we will go to a press when the quantity dictates it. But if the quantities are going to be in that 500 or 1,000 range, we now will do that digital. Even on the 6-panel, which is almost a 28-inch sheet of paper that goes through our digital copier, it'll knock it out. But it gives the customer that much more flexibility to be that much more targeted on who they're communicating to and what that message is to who they're communicating to.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap up, but I do have one last question I wanted to get to. This has been up for a little bit. Does POV, someone asked if someone does a mailer with POV, does POV dedupe and NCOA review the list for people?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
that's just
great.
part of our service. We generally always do it. And then we provide that information back to the customers. You have to remember, though, that NCOA is only as accurate as what the government is telling, or the post office is telling us. I have customers every once in a while who will be disappointed that someone's still getting the wrong mail. But if the folks haven't reported their information to the post office, it's not magical. So you have to remember, and there is a delay with it as well when we have people changing addresses. But yeah, we always run them. We make sure that everything that's going out does have a real address that it's going to. And we do provide that back to I encourage you, please, if you're using a printer, they should be giving that back to you. But if you don't be afraid to ask for it and say, I really want the statistical information back as to, we can keep our database current. And then it's important to take that and update your records with it. It should be a procedure that mailing goes out, you get back the demographic, update the database, and that's just the way that it should always go.
Great point, Chris. Well, I want to let all the attendees know that they will get an email with the recording of this webinar, as well as some bonus content and offers for them. I want to thank Emily Morris for being awesome and being here. I want to thank Chris as well. I think we all learned a lot today. Some great questions that people can take home with them. Is it okay if attendees connect with you on LinkedIn? Do you accept personal requests?
Absolutely.
Good.
I don't think Emily will request or take mine anymore, but everybody
No,
else can
he's
get
no longer my friend.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming, and let's connect on LinkedIn and see you sometime again in the future. Okay, guys?
Thank you, everybody, for
Everyone,
attending.
take care.